Well, the battle in Seattle is back. This is the 14th time that this game has been played, the first since 2015 where the Zags took down Tennessee. Steve, tell me your favorite battle in Seattle memory.
There's only one moment. I think this moment is for every Zag fan out there. It's 2005 against Oklahoma State. Adam Morrison, one of the greatest college players to ever play the game, banks in a three at the buzzer to win that game. I remember that as a young Zags fan, just absolutely crazy, and feels like one of the many moments that helped this program just keep growing.
Well, for this edition in the battle in Seattle, it will be the Gonzaga Bulldogs taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide at the new Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. This is an arena that just opened its doors a month ago. The Seattle Kraken play there. This will be the second basketball game. Seattle U's played a couple games there, but a new venue, a revamped, used to be called Key Arena, now called Climate Pledge Arena. But this Alabama basketball program, I'll tell you what, Nate Oates has done just a phenomenal job turning this program around. Made the NCAA tournament last season for the first time since 1991. Took them all the way to the Elite Eight before losing to UCLA. If you're an Alabama fan, you have to be very, very excited about the direction that Nate Oates has this program going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a huge year for them last year. And then this year, of course, you see what they bring back and what they add to this team, which we'll get in a little bit. But he has this program on the rise, and definitely expect them to make some noise again this year.
So they return really veteran leaders on this Alabama team, Jane Shackelford and Javon Quinterly. Also adding the number 13 recruit in the country in J.D. Davidson. If you have not watched this kid play, he is electric. We'll get into him really as we go into the position-by-position breakdown in this game. Alabama did drop a game to Iona. That was a rematch, actually, of the round of 32 last year where the Crimson Tide came out on top over Rick Pitino's squad. Really just got into a fight versus Iona in kind of their Thanksgiving tournament. Iona does come out on top. But then after that, you really like to see the way that they reacted. Came out versus Miami, and I kind of think with both these teams, we've seen, what their floors maybe are and what their ceilings are. They came out versus Miami, shot over 50% from three.
Red hot.
They went on just an unbelievable run to end the first half, start that second half where they really got this game, Miami could not keep up with the Crimson Tide's offense. And then for this Gonzaga team, I mean, the UCLA game, you watch the rematch of that Final Four matchup, number 1 versus number 2 down in Vegas, and Gonzaga comes out and absolutely throttles UCLA. And you got to think, okay, we've seen what this team is capable of. They come out on Friday, they lose to Duke in what will go down as one of the best games of the college basketball season. No doubt. On Monday night, they come home very tired, you can tell, tired legs, coming back from Las Vegas, and they played a Tarleton State team that they were favored by almost 30 points. Was a 1-2 possession game. Most of the game, end up winning that game over Tarleton 64-55. And so for me, I look at both of these teams and I say, we've seen maybe what their floor is. I think we've seen both these teams' ceiling. Most of the time, you're going to probably be somewhere in between. But I'll tell you what, this is, to me, this is a Sweet 16 matchup. Neither of these teams have played since Alabama played on Sunday. Gonzaga played on Monday. You've got a week to prepare. But this is, for me, just the quality of teams, and you're on a neutral site. I think this is kind of a Sweet 16 preview.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at this. Particularly, too, when you look at coaching. I mean, Nate Oates versus Mark Few here. You have great coaching on both sides. You've got some veteran leadership on both sides, and, of course, some young stars out there. So I think we're definitely going to get kind of those same type of vibes, especially having the full week to be rested up. Both teams will come out at 100%. And, with the way they both like to push it, I think we're going to be in for just an electric game from the start.
I know Zag fans right now are probably a little frustrated with what they've seen the last couple games. If you're an Alabama fan, maybe you caught glimpses of the UCLA or the Duke game, but here's the deal. The blueprint is out on how to beat this Gonzaga team. I mean, if you get physical with them, both at the guard position and down low, that's how you beat this team. You get them into kind of just an ugly game. You don't want to go up and down with Gonzaga, but the blueprint's out. And if I'm Nate Oates' staff and I'm watching this game, I'm telling my guys, we got to get out. We got to be physical. We can't let their bigs, create position down low. You got to, really fight that entry pass. But if you can come out and play a physical style of game, slow the game down, you got to feel good about beating this Gonzaga team.
Yeah, I mean, as the Zags, you never want to put out that blueprint for teams, but it's out there now, and like you said, it's very clear. And if they can do those things, then obviously, this can definitely go Alabama's way on Saturday. But we talked about this early, and I think with this Gonzaga team is when the blueprint is out, it's theoretically easy to beat Gonzaga, but they are very capable of making those theoreticals not easy to accomplish out there. And what it comes down for Gonzaga is being disciplined with the ball. We've seen turnovers really plague them against both Duke and Tarleton State. But you look back to UCLA and Texas, when they take care of the ball, they're very, very hard to beat.
I want to go over the team comparisons now, looking at it side by side. Points per game, Alabama averaging 85.7 points per game. Zags are averaging 86.8. On the rebounding side, Alabama averaging 43.3. Gonzaga averaging 41.1. Alabama's averaging 15 assists to Gonzaga's 18. Both teams have been plagued with turnovers, 14-13, Alabama versus Gonzaga. Alabama's shooting 34% from three on the season. Zags have gotten up to 33%. 3-point attempts is really where you something pops out a little bit on the page. And Alabama is almost shooting 29 attempts per game to Gonzaga's 22. And three-pointers made, Alabama 9, almost 10 three-pointers made a game to Gonzaga's 7. You talk about that the blueprint is easy. I'll tell you what, we'll get into at the very end of this video, we will do our score prediction. But I'll tell you this, I mean, for Alabama to win this game, if they come out and they shoot 56% from three like they did versus Miami, they will win this game. And, for me, as we go through kind of these player-by-player breakdowns, you got to kind of think about how does this game script have to go for each team to come out, with a victory. And I think for Gonzaga, it's, I know Mark Few's telling his guys, hey, let's just play our game, limit the turnovers, play smart. I mean, the turnovers have been bad turnovers. They've been a lot of just mental mishaps, inbounding plays, just ugly turnovers. So I think if you're Mark Few, it's guys, let's just play our style of game. We are the more talented team here. But if you're Alabama, if you can shoot 56% from three, you got to feel good about your chances heading into Seattle.
Yeah, and I don't think that's just this game either. I think this Alabama team, you watch how they play, and it is the exact team that can make a lot of noise come March. And a team that is capable of beating any team in college basketball when they're hot. They've got the players out there, and when they're shooting at their best, it is a very, very difficult team to beat. But when you are a team like that, the flip side of that coin is, when you're not shooting 56%, where else can you find consistent scoring? So, that's where I think Gonzaga can control their own destiny in this if they play their game. But we're talking about 33 turnovers over 2 games. Of course, we were at that Tarleton game in the kennel here in Spokane. And, I mean, like you said, man, they were not good turnovers, lazy entry passes, things that if you continue to do, this Alabama team will take advantage and they will push the ball off those turnovers. It could get ugly quick.
We do love going over analytics on this show, especially Evan Maya's BPR by Asian Performance ratings. Gonzaga ranked number 1 at 63.3 BPR. That's the number 1 offense and defense in Evan Maya's rankings. Alabama's ranked number 7 at a 44.4 BPR. Number 5 offense, number 23 defense. And then talk to me a little bit about just the tempo we're seeing between these two styles of play.
Yeah, I mean, notoriously, Gonzaga loves to push the ball. I think we've seen that over the last few years. Nate Oates and this Alabama squad, though, they absolutely push the ball. They have very good rebounding guards as well, which really helps them get out quickly off those boards. They're coming in actually a little bit ahead. They're 16th in Evan Maya's tempo
Not what you'd
rankings.
expect to see.
Really not. And Gonzaga's at 26. So, I think Gonzaga's rankings dropped a little bit after that Tarleton game. They really weren't able to get out and run like they wanted to. But that is what can just make this game so fun to watch come Saturday, is that both these teams will run. I don't think either of them are intimidated by the other squad. So we could just see a very, very fast-paced game, which we know college basketball fans love to watch.
Well, let's get into our player matchups for this top 15 matchup here. And it starts at the guard position for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. That's Andrew Nembhard, a 6'5" senior, averaging 9 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, shooting 30% from three. This is a kid that started his career at Florida before coming to Gonzaga, was a very pivotal player on their national championship finalist team a season ago. Really played maybe the best game of his career at Gonzaga versus UCLA. We saw, the good Andrew Nembhard versus UCLA, maybe the bad Andrew Nembhard versus Duke. He really struggled in that national championship game versus Baylor. That'll leave a sour taste in your mouth and in fans' mouths. And so I think losing Jalen Suggs to the NBA draft, a lot of Zag fans going to the season were, thinking, gosh, can Andrew Nembhard be the guy? He can. When he limits his turnovers, is able to run an efficient offense. He runs the perfect offense that Mark Few wants to, but we did see flashes again versus Duke, versus Tarleton, of some of those turnovers that really hampered him in that national championship game. And on the other side for Alabama, that's Javon Quinterly, a 6'1" junior, averaging almost 15 points a game, 3.5 assists, 3 rebounds, shooting 26% from three. He started his career at Villanova, sat a year, really starred on this team a season ago, just tore it up in the SEC tournament, was a major part of them getting that 2 seed heading into the NCAA tournament. Talk to me, really, this guard matchup. I mean, do we call it a wash? Do we see some sort of advantage for one side versus the other here?
I think it's likely to be a wash. And obviously I think both these guys are capable of having very good games, like you talked about, Quinterly in the SEC tournament, Nembhard against UCLA. If either of those guys play at that level, I think they can obviously come out as the winner of this particular matchup. For Nembhard, it's really about just getting back to kind of his early season play. Going into the Duke game, I believe he was 39% from three. So he's been a little bit cold the last 2 games. Of course, tired legs on Monday. But we've seen him when he's aggressive out there. Alabama, if you haven't watched him, he is capable of being a very plus ball handler. We saw him with multiple highlight reel crosses against UCLA. He can take over a game. And Zag fans, for Quinterly, just expect to see a very poised scorer. He's not maybe the most athletic player you'll see on the court, but very, very poised. He's a veteran leader, very smooth and controlled out of the pick and roll, and he can really get to the rim and finish. So I do look for really that to be a matchup that can kind of dictate how this game plays out. Like I said, if one of those guys reaches their best level, they can definitely change a game.
Well, the other guard matchup would be Regier Bolton for Gonzaga, 6'3" senior, averaging 11.5 points, 2 assists, 3.4 rebounds, shooting 45% from threes. A transfer from Iowa State, played some very meaningful games for that Cyclone team, and he's a bolt of lightning. Regier Bolton is one of the quickest players we've seen in this Gonzaga program. His ability to get up and down the floor, get to the rim, super athletic. And on the other side, Jaden Shackelford, he's a 6'3" junior, averaging 18 points, an assist and a half, 6.5 rebounds, shooting 14 threes per game at 39%. Shoots 9 threes per game. Excuse me.
9.14. Yep.
But he's a kid that, if you haven't watched Shackelford play as a Gonzaga fan, I think there's a comp that's going to be very familiar, and that's Zach Norvell. We got a lefty who is just a scorer. Just a kid who can come out, and he's never seen, I don't think, a shot he doesn't like per se. But it's not that he takes bad shots. He's got a quick release. He just doesn't hesitate. He's got a lot of confidence to his game. You think about, when we talk about you beat Gonzaga by shooting the three, out-physicaling them, and a lot of times teams can't shoot the three because of the length that Gonzaga presents. This kid gets the shot off so quick. He has no problem shooting 3-4 feet behind the line. I'm not sure that length for Gonzaga is really going to affect him much, but this is another matchup that, when we watch Alabama, offensively, they're doing great things right now. They're cutting, they really good ball movement. Defensively, they have not gelled yet. And so what you watch when you see Alabama through really their first 6-7 games of the season is teams really being able to get to the rim. And for Rasir Bolton, if Alabama does not clean that up before Saturday's contest, we're going to see him do that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at a game with two teams that want to push the tempo, it immediately screams a game that Bolton can shine in, because we've seen him already this season. You saw it in the UCLA game. If you let him get out and running, if you do not get set in your transition defense, he will get to the rim on you. And, of course, he's a very capable shooter himself as well. Shackelford on the other side, I think the Norvell comp is a great comp. That's one of my all-time favorite Zags. I just love guys that just have that confidence out there on the basketball court. Very fun to watch. But you talked about it, man. While he takes a lot of threes, they're not bad shots. I think this offense and what Nate Oates does draws up a lot of good looks for him. They get him open in the corners a lot because of their ability to get to the rim, especially out of the pick and roll. So definitely a guy that you have to watch off ball. You really can't be bringing help from that matchup. You have to stay in his face. And, for this team to shoot 56% from three and go off like they did against Miami, Shackelford's going to be a big part of that. So guarantee that is a focus of the Gonzaga defense going into Saturday.
Moving on to really our next matchup in this game, that's Julian Strother versus Keon Ellis. Strother, a 6'7" sophomore, 14.7 rebounds, shooting 42.5% from three on the season. This is a kid who didn't play a ton of minutes last year. Corey Kispert, an All-American who's sitting behind, but he was capable of coming in and playing minutes. He's now starting, featured on this Gonzaga team. He can shoot the ball from three. He's a slasher, super athletic, can get to the rim. I think a very underrated defender as well for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And then on the other side with Keon Ellis, this is a 6'6" senior. Started at a JUCO at Florida Southwestern State College before coming over to Alabama. He's averaging 13 points, 2 assists, 7 rebounds, and shooting 46.7% from three on the season. And I look at this Alabama team. They lost guys last year. They lost some production, and they have two upperclassmen who maybe didn't fill up the stat sheet next year because they didn't have to. But I look at Ellis, and I see a kid that his stats this year have gone up, because you see this a lot of times. You feature him, you put him in a more prominent role, super capable of taking over those minutes and being productive, and he has so far for this Crimson Tide team.
Yeah, he's just been very consistent for them. He's not a guy that has shown that he's going to go out and get you 35 any given night, but very, very consistent scorer for them, which is what you need next to a ball handler like Quinterly and just a shooter and scorer like Shackelford there. So he's been very good for them, and I think, again, back to you think of kind of the help that Alabama's guards can attract. That's where Keon Ellis has shined. He's more of a spot-up shooter. He's not going to be pulling threes off the dribble too often, but very, very capable of knocking down open threes. And Julian Strother on the other side, I mean, if you're an Alabama fan and you haven't watched him, kind of the same thing. You look at that stat sheet, you see, didn't do much last year, but he is one of the better scorers on this Gonzaga team. We saw him back in Vegas, which is his hometown, of course. I mean, he just balled out down there. I think really kind of put himself kind of on the national spotlight a little bit and said, I mean, even Coach K said after that Duke game that we knew Strother was good and he was better. So that's a lot of praise from Coach K. He's seen a lot of players. He knows how to game plan. It's a ton of praise there. And very elite rebounding guard as well. We saw him with 10 rebounds against Duke, 12 against Tarleton. So he can change the game in a number of ways.
I think Strother is a kid who just loves the bright lights. I mean, down in Vegas, they're playing in an NBA arena. I know Vegas doesn't have an NBA team yet, but T-Mobile was made to get an NBA team. And up at Climate Pledge, it's the same way. I mean, you got the Kraken up there so far, but that is an NBA arena with NBA sightlines.
Bring back our Sonics.
When we talk about, teams shooting from three, I expect both these teams to shoot at a high clip in this game because I'll tell you what, kids like Julian Strother, Rasir Bolton, these score Shackelford, they get in these NBA arenas and it just starts to click. And so I do expect this game to kind of go that direction a little bit. Moving on really to the bigs in this game. We'll start with Chet Holmgren. I mean, number one recruit in the country heading into this season. We got to see him and Paulo Banchero really battle it out in that Gonzaga Duke game. He's a 7-foot freshman, averaging 13.8 points, 7 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 3.5 blocks per game, shooting 71% from the field. also shooting 36.8% from three. And on the other side, Juwan Gary, 6'6 sophomore, averaging 8.6 points, 6.8 rebounds, a steal, 63% from the field, has not made a three so far. This is a very highly touted player coming out of high school, tore his ACL in 2019, and so I think still just trying to find his former self. But if you haven't watched Chet Holmgren play this year, the thing with Chet Holmgren is teams are going to watch him and say, you know, he's lanky, he's skinny, we can kind of push him around. We haven't seen that so far. The one thing I'll say with this Gonzaga team and Chet Holmgren is it's one of those that just because you can doesn't mean you should. He is a plus ball handler for a 7-footer, but we talked about it. When you're dribbling the ball at 7 feet tall, it's a lot of space that the ball has to travel. And what we've seen a lot with teams attacking Gonzaga recently is when he puts the ball on the floor, especially trying to get to the rim, teams are attacking, getting to him. And so it's one of those things where kind of like Drew Timme shooting the three, like I appreciate that you're trying to get some film out there. I don't need you shooting the three. I don't need Chet necessarily handling the ball more than he needs to. But I want to say this. I don't think I've ever seen a 7-footer who has a more pure jump shot than Chet Holmgren. I mean, he can shoot all the threes he wants to. That 36% from three is not...
It's real.
It's real. I mean, you just see the shot. You see this is a kid that at the next level we're going to see as his frame builds out, possibly a player in the NBA like we've never seen. And so if you haven't watched Chet Holmgren, we're going to have a lot of fun Saturday watching this matchup. Tell me, if you're Alabama, how do you slow down Chet Holmgren?
It's tough, man. I mean, a lot of teams have tried it so far this year, and he's just been very consistent. And the thing with Chet Holmgren is he fits this Gonzaga program so well. We talked about this a lot last year. We haven't really done a lot this year, but this program does such a good job of recruiting guys who fit the program values, understand the family aspect. And Chet Holmgren is not a guy who's going to force his way to 25 points a game. He's happy to play his role. So if you double him and choose to take him out of the game, which is really your only way to try to stop Chet Holmgren, is you have to double him. If you leave him in one-on-one matchups, he's going to get his. He's just too quick for guys his size. And if it's somebody smaller, he's got, the 1-foot fadeaway Dirk, jump shot in the paint. I mean, you just don't have many options. So it's one of those where it's just you have to double him. And then your rotations outside of that have to be quick because his passing out of the doubles he's a very capable passer. So, limiting Chet's production is definitely a key to beating this Gonzaga team. And, on the other side for Alabama, Juwan Gary has been a very solid player for them. Like you said, he's still, I think, kind of finding his groove and just getting back that confidence out there. But he is that ultimate glue guy. So, he can affect the game really in a number of different categories and just do all of the little things. And for him, he doesn't need to focus on scoring on Saturday. He needs to focus on denying Chet the ball. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do is don't let him get the ball early. Don't let him get position early and just force him into tougher shots. That's really all you can do. And then at that point, you live with the numbers.
We've talked about with these Gonzaga bigs kind of picking your poison between Chet Holmgren and Drew Timme. We have seen in recent games, we saw some very good early chemistry between these two. We have seen some spacing issues over the last couple games between these two guys. But Drew Timme, this is a kid, preseason player of the year, absolutely went off versus number 5 Texas in the kennel earlier in the season. He's a 6'10 junior, averaging 17 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.4 assists, shooting 62% from the field. I mean, last year in the WCC, he was able to get any bucket he wanted to. Up until really that championship game, he kind of put this Gonzaga team on his back through the NCAA tournament. And then we watch and see what he does versus Texas, scoring almost 40 points. And we're like, well, maybe he will win player of the year this year. He's gone quiet the last couple games. And so I think Mark Few is going to have a lot of fun in the film talking about pace of play, pushing the ball, spacing. I think it's going to be really big for these bigs for Gonzaga to kind of get back to what they were doing a couple weeks ago. You don't want to be playing your best ball in November, right? So there's a lot of time to fix things. But on the other side in this matchup, really for the bigs for Alabama, That's Charles Bediako, a 7-foot, 225-pound freshman out of Canada. Ended up going to IMG Academy. Was the number 35 recruit in his class. He's averaging 7 points, basically 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, shooting 64% from the field. He chose Alabama over Duke, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, Baylor, many others. He's a kid who very raw. Doesn't have a super polished game, very athletic. I will say, this is nothing on him or the rest of the Alabama bigs. I think this is a matchup in this game that Gonzaga has an enormous advantage, is just their 2 bigs versus Alabama's bigs. I mean, we'll get into as we kind of get into some of the bench depth here in just a second with Alabama, where they might have the advantage at the guard position.
Definitely.
But I mean, just watching the film, looking at these matchups, you have to think that this is a game that Drew Timme, Chet Holmgren, somebody's scoring 20, 25 points.
Yeah, it's going to be one of them. I think it's Timme in this game. And when you look at what Drew Timme did early in the season, last year in the tournament, we talked about, he was just balling out for the Zags. When he's playing well, he establishes position down low very quickly in the clock.
Very low.
Very low. I mean, he shoots 64% from the field. And the reason for that is because a lot of his shots are within 6 feet. He gets position early, and then on top of that, I think Bediako is a good defender down low. Maybe not elite yet, but I think he's a good defender. He has not seen anybody like Drew Timme with Drew Timme's footwork. We've said it over and over and over. It is the best post footwork in the nation, without question. And I think when you see a player like that for the first time, when you're guarding that, it's very difficult because Drew Timme has every move in the bag. He can finish both hands, over both shoulders. And with the spacing, I think they're going to be able to kind of create there. I think he's going to have a big game. It could be either one of them, but I think Drew Timme comes out close to 25 points, if not a little bit more on Saturday.
I agree with you. I want to emphasize a point you just made, though, and we actually saw UCLA do this. Drew Timme had like a quiet 19 points in that game, but I want to emphasize a point you made that when we talk about the blueprint is out, the film is out. I mean, the film is out on how you slow down Drew Timme, and that's
Absolutely.
You do not allow him to get low post position. If you can keep him outside of that 3-foot radius kind of down low, it really changes his game. And so I'd be shocked if Alabama doesn't really game plan around that as well. Let's get to really the bench and the depth on both teams. And I'm very excited to talk about this kid for Alabama. That's J.D. Davidson. This is a kid, he doesn't start, but he plays starters minutes. Was the number 12 recruit in his class of 2021, a 6'2" point guard. Any court he goes on, including Saturday night, he's going to be, if not one of the most explosive players on the court. Has a ton of confidence. I love going back to his high school stats. We'll talk about his stats on this season in just a second. But as a senior last year in high school, he averaged 32 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 5 assists per game. In his final high school basketball game in the state championship, he scored 45 points on 18 of 23 shooting in his final high school game. I mean, if you're Nate Oates, you got to start watching this kid and going, hey, like, we may not have a chance to feature him next year, right? He may not be here next year. Zags know this all too well, where they tried to kind of hide Zach Collins. He gets drafted. I'd be shocked if by the time this team gets to the NCAA tournament, he's not starting on this team. He basically plays starter minutes.
Yeah.
Arguably, I mean, he's the most talented player on this Alabama team. You've got a lot of veteran leadership on the season. He's only averaging 8.3 points, 5 assists, very good passer, 5 rebounds. He's an elite rebounder. He's shooting 54% from the field, 26% from 3. But for me, I mean, people are going to gravitate towards Chet. I'm very excited to watch J.D. Davidson in this game.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch Davison take the court. If you haven't seen him, Gonzaga fans, do yourselves a favor. You've got a couple days before this game. Do yourselves a favor. Go look up his high school highlights. I mean, they are just just eye-popping. I mean, if there's somebody who's likely to get a dunk on Saturday that gets number one on SportsCenter Top 10, it's J.D. Davison without a question. He's, like you said, the most athletic player on any court. But what I've really loved that I've seen out of him this year is that he's not forcing that athleticism. He's sharing the ball. Very good passer, like you said. He can throw some good no-look passes. And he draws so much attention because teams are aware of his ability to get to the rim. He draws a ton of attention, and he's done a very, very good job of feeding the ball to his bigs down low at that point. And the 26% from three, that's not where he's going to end the season at. He's a capable shooter, maybe not a 43% guy, but a very capable shooter. So, for Alabama, if there's a guy on your bench that can absolutely change the outcome of a game, it's J.D. Davison, and it is any game they play in, he is capable of changing the outcome of that.
We're going to do this as kind of a final matchup, even though these are guys coming off the benches. I think there's two guys in this game that they're both freshmen. If you did not know any better, you'd have no idea, and that's Davison versus Nolan Hickman. And I actually think they're going to end up matched up at some point in this game. And Nolan Hickman, a kid that was he's going to be playing back in his hometown in Seattle at Climate Pledge. Pretty cool. Was committed to Kentucky, ended up switching to Gonzaga kind of at the last minute. This is a kid who has played not just meaningful minutes, but he's been one of the most efficient guards in the country coming off the bench for this Gonzaga Bulldog team. He's a 6'3" freshman, averaging 7.4 points, an assist and a half, 1.8 rebounds, shooting 34% from three, almost playing 20 minutes a game. I think as the season goes on, just like we talked about Davison for Alabama, we're going to see more and more Nolan Hickman for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. But I think we're going to see those two match up. Another kid that we're going to see matched up versus Davison is going to be Hunter Salas, another freshman for this Gonzaga Bulldogs team. I mean, Hunter Salas has all the tools to be a elite player at Gonzaga, to play in the NBA as well. I would like to see him take just a little bit of that confidence that Davison's playing with Alabama. You watch Davison,
absolutely.
They have a very similar skill set. Gosh, if Hunter, as soon as Hunter gets that confidence, like that is what his ceiling is, right? And so I think a very long guard as well that we're going to see play some meaningful minutes. It's very interesting, early in the season to see like which of these freshmen is going to get like early in that rotation. So far it's been Nolan Hickman, but Hunter's going to play very meaningful minutes for this team as well. Other guys to kind of go over coming off the bench for Alabama, that's Darius Miles, 6'6" sophomore, averaging 8 points per game. Noah Gurley as well. It's a 6'8" senior. Actually, first year at Alabama, played in 88 career games, including 83 starts over at Furman University before transferring to Alabama this season. And then filling out the bench for the Gonzaga Bulldogs, we talked about Nolan Hickman. We talked about Hunter Salas, Anton Watson, a Spokane kid, 6'8" junior, only averaging 3 points a game. This is a kid who came in with super high expectations, has struggled. I think with Anton Watson, it's all about just playing his game, not getting too over-aggressive, can be a good defender at times, but a kid who we've seen many ups and downs in this program. He will play a lot of minutes. They like to go small where they'll actually run him at the 5, especially if Chet or Drew get in foul trouble. And then really the last one that we may not see in this game is Caden Perry. 6'10" freshman, just explosive, kind of Brandon Clark-like athleticism, who's now playing for the Memphis Grizzlies. But a note to make is I would call him doubtful for this game. He did definitely injure himself before the Tarleton State game on Monday night. Actually, in pregame warmups, was just kind of doing some one-on-one post moves with a trainer. Ended up appearing to injure his leg. We saw him kind of sitting on the bench, not in a brace, but I'd be shocked if he plays in this game. So do expect maybe some minutes from Ben Gregg if needed as well. But talk to me as we kind of get into the depth and in the rotations. Do you see a clear advantage one side over the other as these teams are kind of going to their bench?
Yeah, I think this year we've talked a lot about Gonzaga's bench depth and how excited we are for it. Nolan Hickman, I think he ranked the number 33 recruit in the country coming in. Been a very polished guard, very good playmaking. We've seen few trust him, but to me, the edge goes to Alabama here. J.D. Davison is just an electric player. Like I said, one that can change the outcome of a game. So to me, I'm definitely at this point in the season giving the edge to Alabama's bench.
Let's go over our keys to the game real quick before getting to our final score predictions. For me, for Gonzaga, the guards really need to get to the basket. I think it's going to be interesting. Can Chet and Drew find that spacing again? How do the Zags find a formula where Drew Timme can maybe go off for 30 points, but at the same time, the guards are able to get to the basket? I think that's going to be huge. For Alabama, shoot the three, do what's gotten you to this point. They got to feel really good coming off of that Miami game. I think what's going to be huge for Alabama is really coming into this game with a new defensive identity and a whole, trying to out-physical Gonzaga. They don't need to do it. They just need to have a presence. And so it'll be very interesting to see kind of just what kind of tempo this game gets into. Give me how you see this game playing out and your final score prediction.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of what you said. Alabama's got to shoot the ball. I think Gonzaga's length and their defense will kind of get back to what we saw at the beginning of last week before Thanksgiving. And if you're Alabama and you've struggled stopping guards, getting to the rim, it creates two issues for you. One, that's really what this Gonzaga team is best at. We've seen them struggle shooting the ball a little bit. They're very talented attacking the rim. But you've got Drew Timme down low, and you've got Chet Holmgren down low. And if you double them, you've got very capable shooters and Strother and Bolton. I see the Zags coming out on top 87-74 on Saturday.
I want to give the Zags credit. I'm gonna say that on Monday night, I'm gonna give them a pass. Say they had tired legs. They played 3 games down in Vegas, so I'm gonna give them a pass on that one. That being said, had Alabama been that team Monday night in the kennel, Gonzaga would have lost that game.
By 15.
Before I give my final score prediction, I also want to say I think Alabama is very capable of winning this game if they can shoot from 3. I don't see them necessarily slowing down Gonzaga. I don't think that's the type of game they want to get into. I think they want to get into a shootout, and I almost the way I see Alabama winning this game is how Florida beat Gonzaga in the PK80 a couple years ago. I see them just hitting from 3. They don't have to shoot 56%. But if they can shoot 45, 50% from 3, they will leave Seattle with a top 5 win. That being said, I like this Alabama team a lot. I think as the season goes on and Davison gets more meaningful minutes, I think this is a team that can go to the Elite 8. I just don't think this early in the season, they haven't had a test like Gonzaga.
No.
They have a brutal December schedule after this game. I don't think that this is the type of team at this point in the season that matches up well with Gonzaga. That being said, I have a 93-78 Zags final as my final score prediction. Let us know down in the comments how you see this game going, how you're feeling about this Gonzaga team after, a up and down week. We saw the up versus UCLA. We've seen some downs as well. And as always, if you like the content we're putting down, make sure to like and subscribe. But we will be there Saturday night. We get to go to actually our first ever game Friday night at Climate Pledge Arena, seeing the Seattle Kraken play.
Absolutely.
And then turn it around, and we will see the revamped battle in Seattle versus the Gonzaga Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide, 5 p.m. on ESPN2 Saturday night.